10 years, Wisconsin has new legislative district maps. Democratic Governor Tony Evers signed it into law today after weeks of back and forth between Republicans and Democrats. Northern News Now's Michaela Wrench shares how these new maps level out the playing field between the political parties.
Months before the presidential election, Governor Tony Evers signs into law new legislative district maps changing the territory lines of every Assembly and Senate district throughout the state of Wisconsin.
Wisconsin is a very closely divided state, almost 50-50 divided between Democrats and Republicans. But since 2010, the legislative districts have been drawn in such a way that it almost guarantees Republican control of the legislature.
Joel Cypress, a professor of history at UW Superior, believes these maps are going to change the political scene in the state. The new district lines will make state elections much more competitive.
I think we can look forward to seeing both parties in Wisconsin, Democrats and Republicans, be more responsive to voters, because both parties will know that in order to win elections, they have to appeal to a wide range of voters.
During a press conference in Superior Monday, Governor Tony Evers says he's glad to finally get to the point.
We listened to both sides. Some people said, well, stay with the Supreme Court or not stay with the Supreme Court. Doesn't make any difference to me. We had to do the right thing.
3 area lawmakers will be impacted by the new maps, including Senator Romaine Quinn, Representative Chance Green, and Representative Angie Sapek. She said while she is devastated to lose Burnett and Washburn counties for her district, she looks forward to working for the people of Bayfield and Ashland counties. Evers says the maps are both fair and responsive and allows everyone an equal voice.
The voters are the winners here. It's not the Democratic Party, it's not the Republican Party. It is the voters of the state of Wisconsin.
In Wisconsin, Michaela Wrench, Northern News Now.
And we also reached out to 25th District Senator Romaine Quinn. His hometown of Cameron, Wisconsin is no longer in the 25th District. It's in the 23rd District now, held by Senator Jesse James of Altoona. According to the Superior Telegram, Governor Evers says that Quinn will be able to continue serving in the seat until the end of his term in 2026.